Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to the Fossil Record Podcast. I'm your host, Cam the Dino Man, and today I am joined by a very good friend of mine, Ben Floyd. Say hi, Ben.
Hi, Ben. I am very honored to be considered a good friend.
Yeah, so before we get started, do you mind introducing yourself a little bit?
Not at all. I am Ben Floyd. I've known Cam for a bunch of years now. Pushing like 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah,
Um,
around that.
yeah, and we've worked together at the Dinosaur Park in Ogden, Utah for a long time. I was not always a dino nerd. That took a while for me to kind of catch on to the dino fever, I suppose you could call it. But most of my hobbies include things like sports and also writing. But dinosaurs kind of wormed their way into my life a little bit, and I like them now, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, I'd say so. You definitely have taught me quite a bit about prehistory, and one of the topics you've taught me quite a bit about is the topic of this podcast, which is uh, the history of the names of T-Rex with a broader topic of naming dinosaurs slash prehistoric creatures in general. So do we want to start with a quick history about T-Rex before we get going into all the complicated stuff of naming?
Yeah, for sure. T-Rex has probably one of my most favorite histories of any dinosaur. It has an absolutely ridiculous history. And it's one of the earlier dinosaurs, so discovered kind of during that early golden age of paleontology.
Yeah.
And it was very, very first found clear back in 1874. It was actually just found by a student at the Colorado School of Mines, which I don't actually think it was the Colorado School of Mines yet. But whatever school later became the Colorado School of Mines, there was a student there named Peter T. Dotson, who was a student of a professor named Arthur Lakes. And Arthur Lakes was pretty heavily involved in the paleontology sphere of that day. But Peter Dotson discovered a tooth up on the South Table Mountain in Colorado that Arthur Lakes, I believe it was, later described it as being like a big alligator tooth of some kind, or from an alligatoroid. But that was the very first T-Rex fossil that we know of from modern history, was just this big T-Rex tooth. And I've looked up a picture of that tooth before, and it's a good sized T-Rex tooth. Like I can imagine being Peter T. Dotson and finding that up on the hill, just how crazy that would have been to discover just walking out on this Colorado landscape. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, the T-Rex teeth are quite, I would almost say, like, just if you have no knowledge of dinosaurs, but you're just out in the desert in like Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota area, and then you just stumble upon this massive tooth that resembles it resembles other dinosaurs, but also kind of not. And like, I could almost imagine it's almost equivalent to a biblical experience
Yeah.
to find a tooth that massive.
And it wasn't a poorly preserved tooth. Like, I think it's just kind of the top part of the tooth. It didn't have too much of the root. Maybe I'm just misremembering that, but it was still a fairly well preserved piece of the tooth. And so, like, just imagine picking up this just spike off of the ground and being like, what in the world is that? And I kind of understand as well why they thought maybe it was an alligatoroid of some kind. Even though T-Rex, we now know as being this just big ferocious dinosaur that was just eating other dinosaurs probably. His teeth are very round and thick, which is something that we usually see in animals that are eating fish, is that rounded tooth shape. Granted, T-Rex's tooth is also quite serrated, but it is a very robust rounded tooth. Round as in like circumference, like it's kind of like an ice cream cone. And that, like, I can see where they would make that correlation to a crocodilian tooth, even though T-Rex was just using that thick tooth for just chomping through whatever it wanted to chomp through.
Yeah, T-Rex just basically ate whatever it wanted to eat, despite the despite the protests of the other dinosaurs in the Hell Creek Formation.
Yeah. All right. So that was the first T-Rex fossil. And the next one wasn't found until roughly 20 years later. I don't actually know the exact date on this next one. And I don't know if we really know in general what the exact date on it is, which is going to actually cause us a little bit of problems later when we talk about the naming history. But the next fossil was found by a guy named John Bell Hatcher in sometime in the mid-1890s. And he found it in Wyoming. So first one was found in Colorado, second one was found in Wyoming. This Wyoming specimen was sent to O.C. Marsh, Othniel Charles Marsh, the guy from the Bone Wars.
Yeah.
And Marsh was... he was actually working kind of two jobs at the time, because he was working as the head of the Yale Peabody Museum, but then he was also like the government paleontologist. He worked for the U.S. Geological Survey as like the national paleontologist. But at that time, John Bell Hatcher was kind of working for him as this kind of field worker, I guess, to go out and hunt for dinosaurs.
All right, so before the infamous feud of the 1800s.
Yeah, well, no, I think this is actually during that feud, actually kind of toward the end of the feud, because I think that Marsh passed away in, 1899 or something like that? It was sometime in the late 1800s, and this happened in the mid-1890s. So this is, I think, later on in the feud time.
Okay.
I could be wrong about that, but I think that that's what it is. But either way...
Yeah, a quick reminder to the podcast listeners, if we get any of this information wrong or we are unsure and you guys have the answer, please correct us down in the comments and show us where that answer is.
Yeah. Insult us. Insult us in the comments.
Not insult us, but be like, hey, I have the answer and it's found here. That would be wonderfully useful, because we're human and we're bound to have missed some things.
Yep. But anyway, once these fossils were sent over to Marsh, Marsh identified them as a completely different type of dinosaur, and we'll talk about that name. And it actually, the dinosaur that he identified them as is just going to make this whole naming situation even more convoluted when we get to that. But those fossils, Great. I think that they were just some fragmentary postcranial elements from T-Rex. Like, I don't think it was anything like super glamorous. I don't actually know for certain where those fossils are being stored. I reached out to the Yale Peabody Museum about it. They don't have them. They told me that they're in the... I don't remember which museum. Something to do with the Natural History Museum of the U.S. or something like that. I don't remember. But
the American Natural History Museum?
Yeah, but that might not be the right museum either. I'm not exactly sure where they're at. But either way, they're out there somewhere, hopefully. The next fossils were found by Marsh. Oh, actually, I gotta back it up. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a little bit of a reveal here. Okay, the fossils that Marsh found, or that Hatcher found and sent to Marsh, were named as Ornithomimus, which is a completely different type of dinosaur, specifically a species of Ornithomimus called Ornithomimus grandis, which I guess they just thought was like some giant Ornithomimus. The original Ornithomimus grandis material was actually, I think now is thought to be something more like Gorgosaurus or Albertosaurus or something.
So some sort of Albertosaurine?
Yeah, or something like that. But it wasn't until like 1896, so kind of getting into the late 1890s, Marsh published a book, and in that book he stated that he had two other specimens of Ornithomimus grandis, and one of those is almost certainly T-Rex material.
Okay. Well, I find what I find funny about that particular naming is just the fact that T-Rex is known for having some of the biggest teeth of any known dinosaur. And then there's Ornithomimus that had no teeth at all.
I know. And and I'm pretty sure that some of the first Ornithomimus grandis material, well, So Ornithomimus grandis was later, I think, synonymized with Deinodon, which has now been synonymized, I think, with Gorgosaurus, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah. Deinodon is Gorgosaurus.
Okay, but Ornithomimus grandis, the Deinodon material was just a tooth, I'm pretty sure, from Gorgosaurus. So, yeah. So it just makes this whole situation with the teeth and
So Deinodon is
worse.
basically the Tyrannosaur version of Troodon.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So thanks. And Deinodon, I think, was named by Joseph Leidy, who was also kind of wrapped up in the early stages of the Bone Wars stuff. So
oh, yeah.
Just adds to all of that chaos, which is great. Anyway, all of that said, moving on to the next specimen of T-Rex. And this is the one that most people know about in the history of T-Rex. Whenever you look up the history of T-Rex, this is where people usually start with it, which I think is really sad because all of that stuff that we just talked about fascinates me. But this is where we kind of get into the more common history where, why did I just forget his name? Edward Drinker Cope, E.D. Cope, the other half of the Bone Wars, discovered two vertebrae that he thought were from some kind of ceratopsid. So again, just completely misidentified.
Wait, wasn't it? I may be remembering a different part of the story, but wasn't some T-Rex material also thought to be a new species because it got mixed up with Ankylosaurus osteoderms? Or Ankylosaur osteoderms?
I think that was one of the later finds. I think that was probably one of the ones that was discovered by what's his name? Barnum Brown.
Okay, yeah, that sounds more right.
Yeah, I think that those were some of the later material. In fact, that might have been one of the two specimens that was used in the description of T-Rex, but we'll get to those two in a minute. But yeah, with this find, this was just two vertebrae that Marsh found. Thought it was some kind of ceratopsid, like a Triceratops or something, and they didn't actually figure out, or at least I'm not aware of any scientists trying to dispute that they weren't ceratopsid bones until John Bell Hatcher, the guy who found the T-Rex material that was named Ornithomimus, actually went and disputed them as being at least from a theropod. So John Bell Hatcher did at least something right there, which is good.
Yeah.
And that wasn't until 1907 though that he did that. So that was over 10 years later, 15 years later, which is great.
So he was on the right track a decade and a half later.
Yeah. Yep. It just took him a while to get there. But now, so in between the time that Cope discovered the two vertebrae and the time that John Bell Hatcher disputed them as being from a theropod, Barnum Brown discovered two more skeletons of T-Rex in that time. And those are the T-Rexes that are probably two of the more famous T-Rexes. The first one he found out in Wyoming, and that was just a very, very fragmentary skeleton. As far as I'm aware, it's just the lower jaw of the dinosaur. I don't know if that was the one that got mixed in with some of the osteoderms from Ankylosaurus.
What was that? Was that D. imperiosus?
Yeah. Yep, that was D. imperiosus,
Okay.
and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then in 1902, he found the second T-Rex skeleton, and that one he found in Montana. So I just think it's kind of fun that T-Rex, even from the earliest stages, was being found all over the western rock formations. Just turning up in Wyoming and Colorado and Montana. I think it's fun that they were able to find it kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
But those were the skeletons that Henry Fairfield Osborn finally used to actually describe T-Rex in a research paper. So after that, we have now uncovered a tooth, some random bits and pieces, two vertebrae, and two skeletons. So kind of 5 different specimens of T-Rex at this point. And we're finally to the point of having T-Rex named. Took us a while.
All right. Yeah, it took us. I mean, not as long as Helicoprion, I bet.
Yeah, well, Helicoprion actually, they knew fairly early on, at least, that it was a fish, but I don't know how long.
It wasn't properly studied until like what? What did you find? Like 60 years later?
Yeah, at least for the like the shape of it, it wasn't officially described as being in its current tooth whirl look until like 60 years after.
Yeah, and for the listeners who are missing the context, Ben and I worked on a video for the Ogden Dinosaur Park about Helicoprion, so that's just kind of why I mentioned a fish just offhand.
Yeah, and he starred in that video, so go and watch that, give it a like, and then tell us in the comments that you found him here, because it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's it was honestly so fun. That the scene in the river though, that was awful.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we did that. It was a really fun scene to film, but I'm just like, I'm up to my knees in mud and up to my stomach in water. Ugh.
Yeah, and then there was a leak in the waders too. So
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that did not end well, but it was fun.
Yeah, but it turned out great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back on topic. So we've recapped a brief history of Tyrannosaurus Rex and its name. Do we want to talk a little bit more about the names in particular and how it all came to be?
Yeah, and this is where things are about to just start to fall apart paleontologically. Just these names are going to throw the history of T-Rex into pretty much chaos.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's great to have it thrown into chaos for one of the most famous dinosaurs of all time.
It's what we get for knowing about this dinosaur for over 100 years.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so the very first specimen, going back all the way to that tooth, as far as I am aware, it was never given an official scientific classification. It never received a scientific name.
Which is how it should be for teeth.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks Joseph Leidy for Dinodon, and for whoever named Troodon. Was Troodon a cope name?
I don't know. I think offhand, I think it was actually Leidy who named Troodon.
Oh my goodness.
Leidy. I could be wrong on that, but Leidy apparently loved naming things based off of teeth. That might be something we need to double check, but that sounds correct if I remember Joseph Leidy's history well.
Yeah, okay. I guess I wouldn't put it past him if he also named Dinodon, but either way. I like Leidy. For the most part, he was a really good guy, good paleontologist. I shouldn't talk bad about him, but either way, the first T-Rex...
He's one of the founding fathers of paleontology in the American West.
Yeah, and he also did a lot of other good work outside of paleontology, as far as I remember. Yeah. I think that actually during the Bone Wars, he kind of gave up on at least vertebrate paleontology and kind of...
Yeah, he started studying parasites.
Yeah, good on him. So
yeah, to be honest, I think he was studying parasites because it reminded him of another parasite that he knew early on in his life. Edward Drinker Cope!
Jeez!
But yeah, and he did name the direwolf and I think one species of Smilodon.
Okay.
So he didn't do all bad, which he deserves some credit for.
And he studied parasites, so good on him.
Yes.
Now, yeah, so the first tooth of T-Rex was never given a scientific name. But then we mentioned earlier already about Ornithomimus grandis. And that is just so much of a problem. I can't even begin to describe how big of a problem that is.
Yeah.
One of the bigger problems with it in general is that I don't know when the T-Rex material specifically was described as T-Rex or as Ornithomimus grandis. Just because I know that it was sometime in the early 1890s that that some kind of material was discovered that was described as Ornithomimus grandis, but I don't know how far before 1896 when Marsh actually revealed that he had T-Rex material that he named Ornithomimus grandis. I don't know how long before that it was that specific T-Rex material was found. For the sake of this study, we're going to assume that it was all found before Cope found the Manospondylus specimens.
Okay.
Okay. And if someone can prove that otherwise, then it will change a little bit of the outcome. Not too much of the outcome of this whole thing, but it would change a little bit of how the name should have ended up. Okay. But
yeah.
Either way, the two vertebrae then that Cope found, he gave the scientific name of Manospondylus grandis, which is just the greatest scientific name ever for T-Rex. It just means giant porous vertebrae. And could you imagine like kindergarten teachers teaching their kindergartners about T-Rex for the first time? And they're just like, all right, kids, this is M. gigas. His name means giant porous vertebrae. Instead of teaching your kids that it means tyrant lizard king.
Or the tyrant reptile king.
Yeah, or tyrant reptile king. Like, it's just, it would have made elementary school so much worse if we had gone with Manospondylus gigas. But
I concur with that, yeah.
But those two were named Manospondylus gigas. We actually lost one of the Manospondylus gigas fossils. I don't think that anyone knows where it is or what happened to it. You can find pictures online though of the one that's still remaining. It's in some museum somewhere, I think, and there are photos. Even just on Wikipedia, I think you can find a photo of it.
Yeah, and I mean that description is not necessarily wrong. It is pretty apt. Like if you look at the vertebrae, it's very large and it is very porous.
Yeah. Yeah, he did a good job accurately describing that. Does it make it an interesting name? No. But yes, accurate.
Well, it makes it an interesting name. It doesn't make it a fun name.
Yeah. And that's what I like about Henry Fairfield Osborn. When he named the skeletons that Barnum Brown discovered, he went more the fun route. And I guess it's both good and bad.
Yeah.
I just think it's kind of funny that with the two skeletons that were found, they were named in the same scientific research paper. But
were they?
Yeah, they were named in the same research paper. And they were named as T.rex and Dinosaurus imperiosus. They were named Tyrannosaurus rex, not to be confused with the new T.rex that was just described.
We'll talk a little bit more about that in the naming section.
Yeah. But with these two skeletons, Osborn named them Tyrannosaurus rex and Dinosaurus imperiosus, which means tyrant lizard king, and then Dinosaurus imperiosus means imperial powerful lizard or imperial powerful reptile, which I think is a pretty cool name. What I think is funny about that though is that he named the second skeleton first, and the first skeleton he named second. So the first T-Rex skeleton that was described in that research paper was the Dinosaurus. Like the first one that was actually found was Dinosaurus, but Dinosaurus was technically named second. So it was then later synonymized to T-Rex, but...
Interesting. And Dinosaurus had the ankylosaur osteoderms.
Maybe. I don't know. Someone needs to look that up and put it in the comments section, just so that we can get that off of our consciences that we just keep referencing that. Because I remember that happening with one of these skeletons, but I don't remember which one.
Yeah, I'm pretty darn sure it's Dinosaurus imperiosus.
Okay. I've actually gotten to see the Dinosaurus imperiosus material before. It's in the Natural History Museum in London. And I didn't know that it was there while I was walking around that museum. So I turned this corner. I was filming a different video at the time. And I had just filmed a segment with this beautiful ankylosaur skeleton that they have there. And I was just geeking out about this ankylosaur skeleton. I turned around, and there was Dinosaurus imperiosus. And I kid you not, I probably almost had a heart attack right there. I was like, no way! And I ran over, and there was an employee there. Some poor British lady was standing there. I was like, is that the actual Dinosaurus imperiosus material? She's like, yeah. I'm like, no way! Kind of geeked out about it.
And if I remember correctly, you filmed a video for the Dinosaur Park talking about this subject, about the naming of T-Rex. And you did all the research for this, and then a few months later you went to England to film a few more videos for the Dinosaur Park, and that's when you found it, correct?
Yeah, I discovered it way after I had done the research, which honestly just made the experience so much better for me. Like, there are two ways that could have gone, right? I could have found the material first and then made a video on it, but having done all of the research and then being surprised by seeing this material that I had done all of this research on, it blew my mind. I was so ecstatic. It was so fun.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The London Natural History Museum is probably one of the top museums on my list to visit.
Yeah.
I so bad want to go there.
If nothing else, just for some of the historic material, because they have Dinosaurus imperiosus. They also have, I think, some of if not the original iguanodon material there. They also have...
Hold on. Wait. The teeth?
Yeah, the teeth. They're in a little case by the very... You walk kind of through this big maze of the museum, and you just kind of follow the flow of traffic. And right as you're leaving, they're in this like super, like just nondescript case sitting off to the side.
If I remember correctly, the first teeth of iguanodon that were found are currently in New Zealand, so those must be other teeth that were found later on.
Yeah, maybe they were just some of the later material, but I think that they were some of the very first iguanodon material, which I thought was kind of cool. But either way, the one that's really cool that I do know for sure that they have there in that museum is that they have the Maidstone slab that was...
the Maidstone.
Yeah, it was Mantellosaurus, but back then described as iguanodon, and it was some of the stuff that was used in the I guess analysis of iguanodon that was used for the construction of the Crystal Palace dinosaurs. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, that's another thing on my list. If the audience remembers from last episode, iguanodon is my favorite dinosaur, and so I really bad want to do like a YouTube video where I go over to England and Belgium and just go see all the important stuff that happened to iguanodon, and maybe hit New Zealand on my way home, but that's like on the other side of the world. So
yeah. No, New Zealand is also a target location for me, and now that I know that iguanodon's original material is there, that just made it even more of a dream location.
Yeah, as far as I know, the teeth are not on display; they're in collections.
And when did that stop me before?
I mean, that is true. We did go into the collections of the Natural History Museum of Utah.
Yep. All right. Should we
back on track?
Yeah. T-Rex should not have been named T-Rex. It was never supposed to be named T-Rex. So let's kind of go back in time. And this is just to talk a little bit now just about naming of dinosaurs in general, right?
Yeah.
So there are some rules that scientists have to follow to be able to name a dinosaur, or to name anything scientifically, right? If you are naming an animal, you cannot name it the same genus of a pre-described genus that's a different genus, right? So like if I were to find a Triceratops skeleton, and it was the first Triceratops skeleton ever found, and T-Rex had already been named, I couldn't name Triceratops Tyrannosaurus, as far as I'm aware.
I remember there's a lot of stories like that happening in paleontology where they name it something, and it's really fitting of the dinosaur, and then they figure out that it's like actually the name of some beetle or something.
Yeah, that happened with Camptosaurus.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, well, not with a beetle, but Camptosaurus was the name, or Camptosaurus was originally named Camptonotus, and Camptonotus was the name of a cricket, and they had to change the name of Camptosaurus back to what it is now, which is Camptosaurus.
It's always some insect.
Yeah. Thanks, Camptonotus. But so with any name of any species, and it's the same with animals and plants, right? If I found one type of pine cone and then tried to name it the same genus name as a type of pine tree, I couldn't do that. Or of like a fir tree or something, I couldn't do that. However, you could theoretically name a plant the same genus of an animal name, so I could name a pine cone Tyrannosaurus rex. And I think that's hilarious to think about.
Yeah.
But with dinosaurs, whenever scientists name a new genus and species, they're not allowed to reuse an old genus for a new genus that they've discovered. They theoretically can use the same species for two different animals, so long as they don't share the same genus and species name.
Well, I would push back a little bit on that. Not saying theoretically, but
I mean, they actually can
do that. Yeah, because like there's Baryonyx walkeri and Parasaurolophus walkeri, and especially with the recent discovery as of filming yesterday, there's Tylosaurus rex and Tyrannosaurus rex, And there's also some rabbit from some island that has a species named Rex as well. It was like a giant rabbit as well.
I have to give so many props to the people that just named Tyrannosaurus Rex, because they played the marketing scheme perfectly for that. Because now everybody in the paleontology community knows about Tyrannosaurus Rex just because it's the new T-Rex.
Yeah, and we just released a short about that on the Dinosaur Park channel.
Yeah, go look at that. It actually just dropped earlier today.
Yeah, like how long ago? Like 7 hours ago?
Less than that, like 6 hours ago. I think it was close to 1.
All right. As of recording this a couple hours ago.
But either way, it was a fun video to make.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, that's the policies, right? You're not supposed to rename stuff. And also, if something has already been described with a genus name, and then something of the same genus is discovered later on, but given a new scientific name, the new name is actually supposed to be thrown away, and it's supposed to revert back to the original name. Okay, and that is where we're about to get into so many problems with T-Rex. Because T-Rex was given 4 different scientific names. It was given Ornithomimus grandis, Manospondylus gigas, T-Rex, and Dinosaurus imperiosus. So now we have this big conundrum of, okay, wait a minute. If the policy is that it's supposed to revert back to an older name, then shouldn't T-Rex be named like something earlier, like Manospondylus or Ornithomimus? And I don't know, would you like to expound upon that one this time, Cam?
Maybe a little bit, yeah. I haven't done as much diving deep into it, but from my understanding, Ornithomimus was already a different dinosaur, and the T-Rex material just wasn't, understandably, it wasn't fitting with the Ornithomimus genus, and so Ornithomimus is off the table. So Manospondylus gigas and Dinosaurus imperiosus. Manospondylus is a vertebrae, and well, now it's just 1 vertebrae. It used to be 2, and it's a very crappy vertebrae. So it's kind of hard to compare and contrast. So to my understanding, Manospondylus was thrown away, and then Dinosaurus imperiosus was really the only one that really fit T-Rex. And so technically speaking, Tyrannosaurus Rex should be called Dinosaurus imperiosus, which in all fairness, I honestly think like I wouldn't bat an eye if it was Dinosaurus imperiosus.
Yeah, I think it's a fine name. Now, my one problem with it is that technically Dinosaurus imperiosus was named after T-Rex, right? Because it was named second in the research.
But that's right.
The Dinosaurus skeleton was found first. Right, so I don't know what the technicality would be for the ICZN, which is the international something about nomenclature. It's called the International Code of Zoologic Nomenclature. Is the group that decides what names should be what for scientific names for animals. But yeah, I don't know what the policy would be for the ICZN regarding whether or not it should be Dinosaurus imperiosus or T-Rex, just because it is kind of a confusing situation there.
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to take it back to Manospondylus. Technically, it actually should have reverted back to Manospondylus.
Oh.
The reason why, and I think that in my original video that I made about this, I said that it should have reverted back to the original species name for Ornithomimus grandis, so it should have been like Manospondylus grandis. I don't know if that would stick, because Ornithomimus grandis's original material was possibly Gorgosaurus, not T-Rex.
Yeah.
So, even more confusing there. But either way, Manospondylus gigas was for sure the official scientific name given to T-Rex, right?
Yeah,
T-Rex is official.
And then came the advertising train that Osborne pulled with Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah. And what stinks is that it was like 15 years, or no, it was 12 years after Osborne named T-Rex, he actually recognized the similarities between T.rex and Manospondylus gigas, but he chose not to combine the two specimens scientifically. So he knew, and like I'm sure that he knew the rule that he probably was supposed to, but his excuse was that the fossils were supposedly indeterminate of Manospondylus gigas, like meaning that he didn't think that the Manospondylus gigas fossils were good enough to reclassify T-rex as Manospondylus gigas.
Okay.
So it was kind of just Osborn deciding that they shouldn't be combined. I think it was kind of just his choice.
Yeah, and from my knowledge of talking with our paleontologist at the Ogden Dinosaur Park, I believe he's spoken with me a couple times about Osborn and the whole T-Rex thing. Apparently, like, Osborn was pushing around Velociraptor and Tyrannosaurus Rex, but he pushed around Tyrannosaurus Rex significantly more because it stuck with people.
Yeah, people liked it. It was catchy, right? T-Rex sounds really good. M. gigas does not sound good. I mean, it kind of sounds good, but...
I mean, sure, it doesn't have the same flair to it that T-Rex does.
Yeah.
It's honestly kind of funny that we're gonna have to specify what T-Rex we're talking about in the coming decades.
Come on, Tyrannosaurus. No. But yeah, all of that happened, and Osborn, I think, as far as I remember, and I think that you talked to me about this one time about how Osborn was just really good at marketing T-Rex.
Yes.
And that was part of why it became so popular, was because of just Osborn being good at that. But T-Rex, and that's actually kind of why T-Rex is still named T-Rex, because technically speaking, scientifically, it should have reverted back to Manospondylus gigas. But T-Rex was used so much colloquially, like in just pop culture, and also in research papers. It was used for like 100 years.
Yeah, and then the ICZN was just like, oh, crap, we're ignoring our own rule. Let's try and fix that.
Yeah, and I think that what they ended up doing, and I don't know if I'm if I understand the amendment all the way, but they passed an amendment to their naming policies back in the year 2000 that basically just said, if a dinosaur that was named after 1899 has been used... Like, if it's the new name for the dinosaur was made after 1899 and it's been used for 50 years without the older name being used very much in pop culture, or I think actually specifically just in research papers, then they would just revert the old name to the new name now instead.
Yeah, and that's called a nomen protectum.
Yeah.
Okay. And nomen protectum is just Latin for... is just Latin for protected name for the people who don't understand Latin.
I don't understand Latin, but I at least knew that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically what the ICZN did is they just said, if any fossil has just become super popular, and then we find out that it was actually previously named back in the mid-1800s by Marsh Cope, then we're actually just going to keep it as the modern version of the name. And so that... It was just a loophole that they rewrote into their own laws to prevent us from switching back guys like T-Rex to something older. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad that they did that.
Yeah.
As absolutely fascinating as giant porous vertebrae is as a name, I think that Tyrant Lizard King is a better name for T-Rex. It is so much better.
It is so much better. Like, honestly, the 2 out of the 4 names, Dinosaurus imperiosus and Tyrannosaurus Rex, are the coolest names that have been given to that genus or that animal.
Yeah.
So I could be fine with whatever name they ended up choosing for it, but if it's T-Rex, it's T-Rex.
Yeah. And I'm of the personal opinion that Dinosaurus imperiosus is the cooler name. I'd almost prefer that to T-Rex, but since I can't have Dinosaurus imperiosus, I guess I am okay with T-Rex. It's fine.
Yeah, Tyrannosaurus Rex is still probably the coolest second best name you could pick for that animal.
Yeah.
The Imperial Powerful Reptile and the Tyrant Reptile King.
Yeah, pretty neat. And honestly, like, even though Osborne didn't switch it back to Manospindalis, he was good at coming up with those names. I will give that to him.
Yes.
They were good choices.
Yeah, so dinosaur naming is pretty complicated, and especially with the new Tyrannosaurus Rex, I thought it would be a great opportunity to get Ben on here, who's done some researching in dinosaur names. I thought it would be great to bring him on and talk about it a little bit more. Are we missing anything else or any more nuances for dinosaur naming?
I don't think that
or just prehistoric animal naming.
Yeah, I don't think that we're missing anything strictly speaking right now. I think that we pretty much hit on everything about dinosaur names. But we haven't pitched my YouTube channel.
Yes, I was going to do that in the outro. Where can people find you if they want to interact with you more?
Yeah, my personal YouTube channel is called Right Back Up. Right as in WRITE. I'm a writer on the side, and so I have a lot of fun making some fun, educational, and engaging content about how to write better. My tag is at WriteBackUpOfficial, and you can find me on YouTube and Instagram. And I'm just kind of getting my personal channel up off the ground. If you want to see some of the other stuff that I've done about dinosaurs, please go check out the Ogden Dinosaur Park YouTube channel. Cam and I have been working on it together for a couple of years now, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, 2 years of work, and we're now at, what is it? What's the number now? 70-something subscribers? 70,000 something subscribers?
Yes, 73,000 subscribers. Better than 70 subscribers.
Yes. I mean, the Fossil Record podcast is currently at 54 subscribers, and my A Mesozoic Nerd channel is at 56, so I'm not even at 70 yet.
It's better than Right Back Up. I think I have 2 subscribers right now, but I literally have just started it. Yeah, I literally just started this channel not very long ago. So if you're hearing this podcast and decide to come join, you will be one of the very first subscribers to my new channel.
Yeah, and to my understanding, you probably won't be doing dinosaur stuff on your personal channel.
Not so much, but the beautiful thing about my channel is that I'm going to be talking about a very, very wide variety of topics, because I'll be teaching sometimes about how to write about specific things, like how to write about an athlete, how to write about a paleontologist, etc. And in doing those, I'll have to do deep dives into those topics in the videos. So you never know. I might end up doing a video about dinosaurs on my channel.
All right, yeah. And a quick plug for one of my upcoming projects is I am coming out with a coloring book. I recently just got it checked off with Jeff, our paleontologist at the Dinosaur Park. He's given me a bunch of notes. I actually have the paper sitting next to me, just glaring at me. And yeah, I'm currently just in the editing phase, and hopefully that coloring book should be out June 20th, so mark your calendars if you want to have a custom little basic encyclopedia that you can color.
I'm so excited for that.
Yeah,
I've seen it. I've seen the illustrator's copy, and it's really cool. I'm excited for that coloring book.
Yeah, the proof copy is really exciting, but there are some issues that I need to iron out, which is gonna be a nightmare, but it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
So
all
yeah.
Right. Well, thank you for having me, Cam. It was a pleasure to join you for this here podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a pleasure having you. And if we ever come up with any other topics that we can talk about, you know my number, and we can work that out.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Hey, can I do the outro?
Sure. Go for it.
Thanks for watching, guys, or I guess thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave your favorite of T-Rex's old names down in the comments section. Don't forget to share this video with at least 200 friends, and we'll see you guys, I guess, in the next podcast whenever I show up here.
I don't think I even know 200 people.
Well, hopefully whoever just heard that does, and you'll get 200 extra views. You're welcome.
Sweet, yeah. All right, yeah. See you guys in the next